Okay, awesome. Let's start. So, as I said, my name is Juan, and I have been working as a consultant for Biz one of Tableau partners, for almost 2 years now. And today I want to show you one of my hobby projects that I've been working on in Tableau quite a lot. And that is how we can leverage our knowledge of R and or Python to make some really cool things in Tableau. Now, I know a lot of people consider coding boring, so I will try to keep it as interactive as possible. And I hope you guys learned something today in the limited time that we have. Now, is everybody able to see my screen right here? You should be seeing a snake, not necessarily a Python, but a snake.
Yes, we see it.
Yes, and this is a link to a GitHub project that I created a while back. And what this basically is the guide for anybody who would like to follow the first example that I'm going to tell you. What I basically did is find a solution in which you can use Python. So you can do all of the data cleaning with Python and then convert that into a Tableau hyper extract and then publish it directly to Tableau server. Why is this super cool? For multiple reasons. They're all explained in this file, but quickly, one, it requires no manual work. So don't you just hate it when you're creating a data source and you forget to change this and then you have to open up again and do quite a lot of work? It completely removes it. Two, with Python, you can do a lot of formulas that are not supported by Tableau. Some examples are title casing, so that the first letter is always in capital, something that is surprising that doesn't exist yet. The in operation in SQL, some more complex regular expressions, or just a row number. Those are all formulas that are not available in Tableau, but are really easy to do. And the third interesting benefit of this approach is that you don't have to touch a computer or Tableau desktop at all when you're creating data sources for Tableau server. I think anybody that has created a data source for Tableau server and when the data source is really, really big, knows exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's a lot better to just let servers handle the entire process. So with that said, I created a really, really, really quick demo. What we have here is just to show you how little code this actually involves. So the first thing is the libraries that we have to call. And what I'm doing here is just creating a dummy data set. It's nothing special, just some names, some numbers. We could potentially add more names, more numbers, but that's just up to us. Then I leave it completely empty here for people to do any type of transformation that you want. And what I want to show you is that with this line of code right here, we are able to turn these little data sets into a Tableau extract. How does that look like? Let me show you. It looks exactly like this. This is a file that you can just simply open with Tableau and you're going to be able to see these exact same data. And I know this is not a very complicated example. I try to keep it dumb as much as possible so that we don't get really caught up in the details. But I think this approach really opens up a lot of opportunities. So the first use case that I wanted to show all of you guys is you can create data sources 100% in Python. You can then transform them into a hyper extract. And you can then publish that extract completely automatically using a mix of the extract API and the Tableau server client for Python. It's really cool stuff, especially for companies building really big data sets. Let's see if it opened already. Yes, this is the extract that we just created with that notebook. It could have been a lot more complex, but let's just keep it simple because I have a second use case that also might be very interesting to show. Nope. The second use case that I wanted to show today is maybe a bit more interactive and more flashy, and that is how to call an API from Tableau Desktop and how to write back data to a database. And the answer for that is you can do all of that calling R or Python inside of Tableau Desktop. I built a script here just for the fun of it that takes a name. In this case, I said John, but we could take any name. Somebody wants to tell me their name that are currently listening right now? Somebody? I'm gonna pick Kiddo. I really hope this is how you write it. And I'm sorry. So this is the name. Yes? Okay, this is the name. And now I just created one chunk of code that what it does is it sends the name that I just typed to the Genderizer API. What the Genderizer API does is it checks the name with a list of other names and it gives me a prediction of the gender. So let's see what it says. It says Kirill is a male, which in this case is correct. Now, this example is also quite lame. Honestly, the use case of wanting to predict male or females is not that interesting. But think about it this way. Think about all of the interesting possibilities that suddenly open up when you can call an API from Tableau. You can suddenly call the Google Analytics API, which can tell you driving distance from point A to point B. You can call an API that does a prediction. Maybe one of your sales representatives is in the line with a client. In the line with a client, and that person says, hey, something about my situation changed. And you just type it in and see if this allows me to get a bigger mortgage. And you could potentially do that with an API. The next thing that this code does is it writes it back to a file. In this case, I just chose a CSV. As you see here is Kiddo with this. This was just example we just gave. I just chose for now a CSV to not complicate our lives. But this is also something that we could do to databases. Now, I'm now just showing you how it works from my text editor. But let me show you how this whole process works in Tableau Desktop, because that's where the real magic is. First things, I'm gonna restart my session. I'm gonna create an instance of an R serve. And for those of you that are not familiar with R, what I'm basically doing here is creating some sort of server with my computer so that I can connect Tableau Desktop. And one point I haven't mentioned yet, which is very important to understand this, is that since version 9 of Tableau, it is possible to call chunks of R and Python code inside of Tableau Desktop. And what I have done basically is writing this calculation called prediction. What it does is essentially the same that you just saw with the name. It's the same just when I predicted Kirill's was a male. I'm doing right exactly the same, and I'm also appending it to a file. The difference now is that instead of hard coding the name Kirill, I can do it from here from a parameter. Let me show you how it works. So I just created a parameter, just nothing special. Here I can type any name. For example, let's try Carlos. Not my name, but it's a cool name. And it's telling me that Carlos is a male. Let's try another name, maybe Yola. Yola is a female. Let's try Megan. Megan is also female. Now, the reason I think this is quite interesting is because this data doesn't exist anywhere in my data set. I'm just typing these parameters and it's giving me a prediction back. But another really cool thing that we're doing here is also that this data is getting saved. Let me show you. Yes. Oh, okay. I need to renew my Excel version. As you can see right here, these are the names that we have been calling together with the timestamp and a prediction value together if they're male or female. So let's just wrap it up and give the floor to some questions to conclude. We have done quite a lot with R and Python. For this particular presentation, I just decided to simplify the examples, but the possibilities are endless. The first thing that we did was using Python to create an extract. If you want more information about this, and if you have a more complex use case, please let me know. I'm very happy to show you some of the basics or just think together with you. Alternatively, feel free to visit my GitHub. Here is the project. Here is everything with a lot of detail on how exactly you do it, all the way until you publish it in your Tableau server. So that's use case number one. Use case number two is 100% in Tableau Desktop, and we did two interesting things. The first one is we call an API. In this case, the API was just to predict if a name was male or female. This approach is particularly powerful because that name didn't exist in our data. It's just a parameter that we just are passing right now in the spot. And there are a lot of interesting use cases that you could do also calling APIs. The third thing that we did also from Tableau Desktop is writing that data back. I hear quite often cases where people would love to just do some changes to their data and send it back. Well, you can do it with extensions, but alternatively, the solution that I'm just showing you today works. Today, we just did it with a CSV, but if you change the code, you can potentially do exactly the same sending it to any type of database. And that's it. I want to thank all of you for your attention, and I do believe we have some time for questions. So please let me know if you have any particular questions.
Thank you, Juan. Very nice. I really like the part that you can send the data back to the source. So really interested in this use case from my side. Dear Tableau host, maybe we can open lines a little bit for the questions. I do not have any questions in the Q&A, so maybe people will be less shy to ask the question in the
Actually,
on the line.
We have one question from Henrik. What is the role of the rserv on the Python code?
Yes. Maybe I didn't explain that really clearly. Today, I wanted to show one example in R and one example in Python. So for the first use case, which you're seeing right now, this one has been implemented 100% in Python. And well, the reason why I did it in Python is essentially because the Tableau server client works with Python, and it's really cool that you can just use Python as a glue to combine the creation of a data source all the way until publishing it. The second use case, which I show you in Tableau Desktop, is actually coded in R. I could have also coded this exact same thing or any little variation in Python or even in MATLAB, even though I don't know MATLAB. Tableau supports all of them. But for today, I wanted to just show both. And I believe I didn't make the transition clear enough. So that's the role of the rserv. The role of the rserv was to host this little chunk of code here, which is written in R. I hope this answers your question.
And then one more question we have from Abdul. If I have an ML model that churns out forecasts for the next 24 hours, do I go through my data warehouse and paste data there, and then Tableau picks up the data versus real-time sales? Or can I directly import my forecast values into Tableau using this Python integration?
Well, there are two things of that question. The first one is I'm really happy somebody mentioned machine learning in here, because I believe the most powerful use case for using these R and Python scripts inside of Tableau Desktop is to call machine learning models. And create real-time predictions. I think that's really, really powerful. And yeah, that's part one of the question. Part two is, sorry, can you repeat that question? I got a bit distracted with the first part.
No problem. And then the second part of the question, or can I directly import my forecast values into Tableau using
Yes.
this Python integration?
Yes, regarding what exactly you can do, you can take both approaches. You can either send this data directly to Tableau, and you don't even have to save it somewhere. It can just be sent from the API to Tableau and just live temporarily in Tableau, or you can write it back. The only cautionary tale that you really have to know when you're writing data back is that some formats, especially the CSVs, they don't like being opened by an application while you're trying to append data to them. This is not a problem with most databases, but it's definitely worth checking. So in short, you have the two options. Both of them are fine. But if you want to write data back and then read that same data, you might have to be careful because some systems don't like being open in an application and being rewritten with code. I hope this answered your questions.
So Juan, we have two more questions. So first question from Koen.
Yeah.
Can this be done with Tableau Online? Or it's only we need to use Tableau Desktop?
Wow.
Maybe Koen, it's a little bit out of context now.
No, definitely. It's a tricky question because I do know that the advanced analytics team from Tableau is currently working on this. To be really honest, I'm not 100% sure if this feature is out yet or not. But what I can tell you is that if it's not out yet, the advanced analytics team from Tableau is currently working on this.
Okay. So Koen, if you need more details, please elaborate. There is a question from Marisa. Does Tableau itself recognize this kind of code?
This kind of what, sorry?
This kind of code, I believe the one that you were using, showing in the Tableau desktop.
Yes. Well, actually, no. I didn't want to go very technical on this topic. If you're happy to go on the technical part, please feel free to contact me at bizstory.com, the place where I work. We have plenty of blogs explaining the technical part behind this. But essentially what this calculation does is by writing script str, I'm telling Tableau, prepare yourself, a string or a text value is going to come out of this. And then what Tableau does is it just sends this order to R or to Python, just like if it would be impersonating you. As far as Tableau is concerned, the only thing that Tableau has to care about is receiving one string back, or actually just string because I said string. It could be an integer or a Boolean or something. And an interesting thing to mention about this approach is that Tableau just impersonates you and it does everything that the code here does. So if you really want to implement this in an enterprise setting, it's really interesting to also fine tune the security behind this. Because Tableau is just sending that order. And if Tableau has full privileges over a computer, a network, or a server, it's going to run this exact same script with full privileges. So it's interesting, definitely, when you're implemented to think about it. Tableau, and in short, Tableau doesn't recognize, it's just sending the order directly to my R instance, which in this case is the one I created here.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And the last question I see in the Q&A, it's from Shiva Kumar, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. So what's the difference between extract API and hyper API? I guess it's a very good question.
Did I say Hyper API?
I can't recall. Maybe Shiva Kumar, you can elaborate on this topic.
Maybe it might be interesting to know why exactly you're asking that question, but I think the answer is going to go along the lines of there are multiple APIs in Tableau. I think more than two handful of them. And they all do different things. There is one that is particularly important for the other trick that I show you here in Python, which is, first of all, the Hyper API, which is what PanTap, a program. Oh yeah, sorry. The Extract API 2.0 is what PanTap, I don't know, I don't read that word out loud that often, is using on the background to turn Panda's data frame into an extract. So for that regards, it is what this program is using. I do know that it's possible to rebuild PanTap, and it's not that difficult in case you care about security and want to rebuild this. So that's one thing. The other thing I mentioned is Tableau Server Client. And Tableau Server Client is interesting when you already have the Hyper file and you want to send it. So my point here is during this talk, I spoke about two different APIs, but I'm not really sure why exactly you're asking. Maybe would you like to elaborate on the question or?
Yeah, Shiva Kumar. Or Caroline, maybe we can unmute Shiva Kumar so we can have more details.
Sure.
We have a reply, Johan de Groot. Thank you. So Hyper API and Extract API is the same. Hyper API is the new name. Good. Tableau user group.
Shiva, you're able to speak if you like.
Hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much for the introduction for this, John. It was informative. So my question is, there were multiple APIs doing the same thing. For example, Extract API as well as the Hyper API is also creating the Hyper file. So I'm not sure which one to go with. And the Tableau automation page is also showcasing both the Extract and Hyper API. So I'm having a confusion between which one to go with. Yeah, that was my first question.
Yeah, that's okay. I understand. So the confusion lays in that there are multiple APIs. Some of them have redundant functionalities. But when it comes to creating extracts, there has been a legacy of at least 3 different tools that are used for this. Way back then, I believe by the time of Tableau 10, there was something called the Tableau SDK. Then there was the Extract API, and then there was the Hyper API. Correct me if I'm wrong, is that the right order? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's important to.
So maybe.
Yeah.
Extract is dealing with the SDK, the older versions. When we are jumping from older versions to Hyper, then we can use Extract.
Yeah, exactly. One thing to take into account is there are multiple libraries in Python that transform a data frame into an extract. Some of them use the deprecated SDK. Some of them use the Hyper API, and some of them use the Extract API. So you might have to see which is which. You could still use both, I believe, but it depends on your use case. If you are a complete rock star when it comes to Python and you can build your own tools, I would recommend you to start using the Hyper API. But if you have to work with legacy packages, it depends. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so thanks a lot. Juan, I do not see any more questions in Q&A, so for everyone,
Cool.
please collaborate in the Q&A. So this one will stay with us, I hope, till the end of the
Yeah, definitely. Maybe some. Oh, sorry.
your parts.
Maybe some last words is if you have any questions when it comes to this topic or anything Tableau related, feel free to add me on LinkedIn /JM Perafan or just by Juan Manuel Perafan. I'm really happy to just tell you more about this topic or anything Tableau related, really. Thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you guys later in the future.
Thanks again. Pleasure to have you. So now I would like to switch to Simon with also very interesting point. So Simon, feel free to introduce your topic and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kirill. Can you just confirm you can hear me and see my screen all right?
Yes, very good. Community 9, please. Yeah.
Fabulous. Right, cool. So welcome everyone and thank you for allowing me to speak at my first ever Netherlands Tug. Unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of coming over to see you all in person, but it's great to be able to join you virtually. So I'm today going to be talking about the community and I. So that's going to focus on how the community has influenced my Tableau journey, but the primary focus is how I apply the community principles within my working day within JLL. So just a bit about me. My current role is BI Centre of Excellence Director within JLL. So we are a corporate real estate company that specialises in data. And I use data every day to be able to support our staff to deliver the best service they can to our clients. And I'm really privileged to work with a great team, primarily based in the UK and London. But we've also got people based in India, Warsaw in Poland, over in Australia, to a shout out to Fee Gordon and the team over there, and also in America. So for us as a virtual team, community is really important. But a bit about me to start. So in addition to my role, I'm really proud and honoured to currently be a Tableau Zen Master. So this year is my second year, and I'm also a Tableau User Group Ambassador, and I help co-lead the UK Health Tug and the virtual Global Health Tug. The reason being is before I joined JLL, I led an analytics team within the National Health Service in England. You see on screen, that's me looking geeky at the Tableau conference. And that's my Tableau Public profile on the right-hand side. The reason I wanted to share that is Tableau Public has been such a big part of my journey, both in terms of learning and in terms of my enjoyment. I would admit, if you looked at me about 5 years ago, I probably spent my evenings playing FIFA on the PlayStation. I will geekily admit that I now do Tableau visualizations in the evening, most of which are sports related, and publish them. That's in between trying to look after my 2-year-old. But just in terms of, before I move on to my life in JLL and the community, in terms of my Tableau journey, prior to using Tableau, so I started using Tableau about 5 years ago. And prior to that, it's fair to say if you cut me, I'd have probably have bled green. So everything was about Microsoft Excel. Everything was about kind of automation was the holy grail. And I led an analytics department where we utilized Excel, VBA, SharePoint, Microsoft SQL to be able to try and automate as best we can data, but very much we were a report factory and not a data visualization team. And it wasn't until I started using Tableau that really it opened my eyes in terms of how I could approach data differently, both from a production point of view, but also a cultural point of view, in terms of recognizing that it's about people and how you empower people to explore data on their own terms. And what's influenced me in my journey are user groups. So in the UK, we're really fortunate to have a very successful and vibrant London Tableau user group, and a shout out to the committee, so Paul, Sarah, and the rest of the guys, David, etc., and Laura. We have in Tableau, we have a really vibrant user group. We meet up in person, but the reason I wanted to shout it out is because it was 3.5 years ago that I attended my first London Tableau user group, And it really opened my eyes in terms of what was possible, in terms of I wasn't alone. And it wasn't until I recognized the value of the community that I really started expanding my horizons in terms of what was possible with Tableau, and how I then brought that back into the workplace to benefit my analysts. And obviously from there, we created the healthcare user group and the virtual one as well, to be able to extend that in terms of industry boundaries. And the other aspect of my journey has been initiatives. So I'm sure I'm not the only one on the call today that's benefited from Makeover Monday, but very much Makeover Monday is something that I personally participated a lot in my early days of using Tableau, and still try to as much as possible today, although Charlie and Eva will probably be the first to admit not enough. But realistically, Makeover Monday has been a fantastic resource in terms of learning best practice, but also being inspired by what others do with a common data set. And I will give a shout out to certain initiatives throughout this call in terms of how I've adopted them and the principles that are behind them within the workplace of JLL to benefit our analysts. But just a shout out as well to James Smith and Spencer Bulke. We actually co-lead alongside Chris Westlake Sports Biz Sunday, and that's our community initiative to try and bring together sports fans across the Tableau community to showcase their vises and give them a monthly challenge. And I thoroughly enjoy it. And if there are any sports fans on the call today that want to find out more, just give me a shout and I can happily share more. But enough about my personal story. What I want to focus on for the next 10 to 15 minutes is how I take the principles of the Tableau community and everything that we benefit from virtually as a group today, and how I apply that within the workplace to make JLL Centre of Excellence a vibrant community where people want to work. And that's some of the retrobates that you see on screen there, and me looking slightly dodgy in a pink shirt and red trousers, in terms of that's my team based in London on an event that we did last year. But for me, before I jump into some of the examples, what I just wanted to emphasize is, regardless if it's the workplace or it's the virtual community that we're part of, it's all about people for me. So when I'm at work leading a centre of excellence, my primary job is to make my analysts the best analysts they can, but also to support my consumers to make sure that they are effectively utilizing data. So it's not all a technical focus. You can have the best dashboards in the world, but just remember, if no one's looking at them, what's the point? So for me, when I say it's about people, I do mean it's about two sets of people, both your production analysts who are using Tableau every day to develop dashboards, but also your consumers who are using data and dashboards to be able to influence change and make operational decisions. And I won't touch upon it today, but kind of data literacy is a big part of how we support our consumers to be able to maximize their use of Tableau. So the first thing that we do in JLL to utilize the concept of a community to benefit our visualizations is we chose to develop visualization standards. So just to give you an idea and a concept, we've got about 700 desktop users across the whole of JLL. All of those are creating products and dashboards that are uploaded to our Tableau server. For me, Viz standards are not about saying to our end users or our analysts, you have to create a bar chart, you have to create a line chart. Pretty much the only thing I do say is you can't do a pie chart. And that's, I think, a well-known statement that is going across the Tableau community. But for me, the reason we do Viz standards is to ensure consistency in design, share learning across our community, but also to inspire each other through having a shared platform and a shared process and playbook in terms of how we approach data. And I do fundamentally believe it attracts and retains talent because we're seen as being able to promote when a new analyst comes in, we give a shared vision and a shared goal in terms of how we want them to approach using Tableau. But ultimately, we want to give our end users the best possible experience so that they can see and understand their data in the quickest possible fashion. and they don't have to guess how they interact with the dashboard. So I'm going to give you a couple of techniques in terms of what that looks like, but just a quick shout out. You'll notice in the band title, there are 2 colored triangles. That's our way of visually prompting to our end user that there is a certain type of click action or hover action or URL action that is applicable to that chart or that band. So anywhere where an end user can click on something and it updates, in our Viz standards, we've got a common visual prompt to say a colored triangle of a certain color represents a certain user experience. And our users have found that really helpful because it means they don't click on something and then wonder why the Tableau dashboard changes. Actually, they know it's been done by design. So in terms of what our Viz standards consist of, we have Visualize learning exercises. So in addition, it's a really important principle that we wanted to learn, and actually I'd touch on it a little bit later. We didn't just want to say this is what a dashboard should look like. We also wanted to say this is how you do it, so actually they understand the why and the what. So we actually do Visualize learning exercises where we ask our analysts to connect to Superstore, and we give them exercises to recreate the concepts of the Viz standards. So how do you do padding properly? How do you do containers properly? How do you do set actions? How do you do our formatting of our numbers, of our axis? And we ask them to actually do exercises and demonstrate that they've learned the concepts. We also embed within our Viz standards community blogs and examples. So when you access the JLL Viz standards that are actually on our Tableau public page, you can actually see a load of blog posts that have been written by the community that we use to educate our analysts to say, how do you do this? So if someone's not quite sure, they don't have to guess. They can use the Viz standards as a learning and education process, as well as consistency in design. Alongside the Viz standards, we also apply a common process in terms of how we develop dashboards. So we actually do agile working. So we have daily huddles. We have a pipeline and a backlog where we prioritize work. But when we release it, an equally important part of the journey is to do release cycles so that we're promoting our work and we are embedding user material in terms of guidance, notices, etc., alongside Tableau, so it makes our dashboards easy for people to use. And I touched on it a little bit later in the call, so I won't go into it in detail now, but a concept of Viz reviews, and I'll just leave that one hanging so you can try and guess what it is. And then in terms of our user experience for consistency in their journey, we've got a consistent JLL Viz color palette that we recently worked with Set Reset, who are a UK-based design company, to take JLL's colors and create a specific data Viz color palette that is a very toned down color palette to allow the data to sing and reduce the visual complexity. And as I spoke about earlier, we've got the triangles as the common prompts. And what inspired us with our Viz standards, we just wanted to give a shout out to Workout Wednesday. And the reason we wanted to give a shout out to Workout Wednesday is that community initiative challenges people to understand how dashboards are created and how certain concepts in Tableau are made and developed. And that's exactly the same principle that we want to apply to our Viz standards. We don't just want an analyst to follow it, we want them to truly understand the why so that they can really maximize their efficiency in their design processes. So that's why the critical part of our Viz standards isn't the actual template, it's actually the education, the exercises, and the learning that we give to our analysts and the time that we give them every week to learn new functionality in Tableau and new techniques. And as I said, we do Viz reviews. So this for me, when I started JLL, was quite a new concept, but it's probably the one thing I would say that we've done every week that makes the biggest difference. So they can be virtual or they can be in person, but because, as I said earlier, we are a virtual team of people across the globe, we host them on Microsoft Teams. Viz reviews encourage team collaboration. So gone are the days where an individual analyst does a dashboard and then they're the only ones that are aware of it. They release it and they move on and none of the team know. The whole idea of doing Viz reviews is that anything we release as a team, all of the team members and all of the analysts fully understand and they're part of, So not only do they feel as though they are contributing and it's a team success, but also all of us can participate in that development and all of us can support that dashboard moving forward. A Viz review does not focus on formatting. And trust me, it is really easy to fall into the trap of using a 30-minute Viz review to focus on colours, fonts and number formats. And I did that the first time I ever held a Viz review for the team. It lasted about an hour. We had a data schooler come in who presented a Viz to us, and I think I owed her a massive apology and a glass of wine at the end of it, because for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, we ripped apart all of the fonts, the number formatting and the colours and the decimal places and the axes. That for me isn't the purpose of a Viz review. That can be done offline in a one-to-one. The purpose of a Viz review is about saying, does it share the proper user story? Does it share insights? Is the analysis making sense? Is it intuitive? It's not about, does it follow one decimal place in the right font size? And as a culture, it's also not about criticism. So actually analysts should see it as an opportunity for an open conversation and a learning, not an opportunity for them to be criticised personally. And that's a really important cultural piece, so analysts receive the Viz reviews as a positive. So a shout out to Fee Gordon, who's our strategy director in Australia. She came up with the concept of any feedback we give in Viz reviews should start with I like and I suggest. And they're deliberately two chosen words that have got a positive connotation to them. So what our Viz reviews look like is the analyst submits a Viz for review on Teams, and they usually do that on Thursday. Then the individual analysts, or the other analysts in the team, review that on Tableau server, and they document their feedback. I then host a Viz review on a Friday lunchtime, and it's deliberately an informal session. There's no agenda as such. We just say these are the Vizes that are going to be reviewed. The person who's developed the Viz shares and presents the Viz and talks through the concept, and then their peers give feedback and their peers document it on Teams so that the person that's presenting doesn't have to worry about recording that feedback. They can just worry about the conversation and maximising the experience. And then the analyst who has developed it will review that feedback on Teams, implement the feedback, and then we may bring it back for a future Viz review so that the analyst can see the closed loop of what their feedback has contributed in terms of a better Viz. And in terms of the inspiration behind that, it won't probably be a surprise to you that Makeover Monday Viz reviews that currently Eva and Charlie do, but a shout out to Andy Cockreeve and Andy Kriebel who have done it previously. Viz reviews for us were our inspiration of saying, how can we keep and use that same culture of someone giving feedback to benefit a Viz, to improve a Viz? How can we take that and apply it in the workplace so that we can all be living and breathe that every week? And our weekly Viz reviews are a very similar concept to the Makeover Monday Viz reviews, but we only do 1 or 2 Vizes in them for the half an hour to an hour that we schedule. And then moving forward, we also do a Viz challenge, and this is the one that I'm most passionate about. So it's based on a particular chart type, and we do it every month. We deliberately say to our analysts, you can't use work-based data. And the reason that we do that is we want our analysts to be able to share the visualization on Tableau Public and with each other. And if we use work data, it would limit the scope of what we could share. It focuses on storytelling skills, which might give away a little bit of where we get the inspiration from. And it's not a competition. So there's no prizes, there's no top end, but I do actively celebrate creativity and innovation by doing a write-up at the end of the process to be able to celebrate the Vizes that are created. And on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the Vizes that were created across the JLL community when we shared the challenge of an annotated line chart. So how we do it, the analysts decide the chart type and the topic, and we do that via a poll on Yammer at the end of the month. I write a post. So if we decide it's going to be a heat map or it's going to be a bar chart, I will write a post at the beginning of the challenge to share what is the community best practice that we want to be able to follow and inspire. So we are learning through this, how we apply that back to the workplace. And on the 1st of the month, the challenge commences. At the end of the month, I will host an internal WebEx where all of the analysts get 2 to 3 minutes to share their visualization back with their peers. And we all give feedback on that call in a similar concept of I like and I suggest. But at the end of it, I write a monthly reflection, and also I give one-to-one feedback directly to analysts on their creations. And we have an internal gallery on Tableau of the vises that were created to be able to celebrate success and to be able to promote expertise internally and celebrate achievements. And in terms of the inspiration behind that, it was very much driven by storytelling the data. So if you do want a great example of how you can take a challenge and put it in the workplace, I would strongly encourage you to check out the Storytelling with Data challenge, because it focuses on a chart type as opposed to a data set. So it really does give people the creative freedom to be able to learn a technique and apply that back to their workplace. So there's so many examples of an annotated line chart. We do it every day at work. So when an analyst sees another 30 of their peers create an annotated line chart, they can take the best bits of that and apply it back into the workplace in their future visualizations. And the last one before I finish is about being visible. So you will know, as being part of the Tableau community, whether it be Twitter, the forums, Tableau Public, when we do something well, we as a community are fantastic at celebrating and recognizing that achievement. And as a company, I want JLL to be the same. I want us to be visible, so we are sharing our successes, both internally and externally, so we can inspire people, but also it promotes the organization. And it allows people to actually reach out and say, I want to be part of it. And just to put that into perspective, the last 3 times that I've recruited in my COE, I've never had to go out to advert, because actually people are reaching out to us to say, can I come and work for you? Because I've seen what you guys are doing and I want to be part of that. And that's the benefit of a vibrant internal community in your workplace, in terms of it really does attract talent. So in terms of being visible, we want to create internal discussion forums. So similar to Twitter or Yammer, but we use Microsoft Teams internally. We want to share inspiration. So when the Flalage twins or Klaus creates a great new blog post, actually we actively share that on our internal forums, and we encourage people to check them out. But externally, I want to be able to shout about what we do in JLL, and I don't want to have the culture whereby we don't share because we worry people will copy us. Being absolutely honest, everything we do in JLL is inspired by the community, so we don't invent it. A lot of the stuff we do is just simply taken and adapted from what experts are doing across the Tableau community. So actually, why shouldn't we share it back? Because we've benefited from them, so we want to give something back. And the way that we do that is, you'll see on the left-hand side, we actually published our Biz Standards to a new JLL Tableau public profile, and we want to use that Tableau public profile to upload new examples of how we do survey data or how we do KPI dashboards. So keep a lookout in the future, because we are actively wanting to share our visualizations anonymized, so not using client data, but using kind of Superstore data to demonstrate how we approach common tasks in JLL and allow the community to benefit from us. And the inspiration we had from that was the BBC audiences. So about 1.5 years ago, they shared their Tableau style guide, and it was outstanding, and it still is outstanding today. And just a shout out to them, because they really were the inspiration behind us in terms of getting out there and wanting to share what we do. So that's it from me. I just wanted to say thank you. If you do want to reach out and ask any questions, feel free to contact me on Twitter or via my blog. And if you do want to check out some sports visualizations, feel free to on my Tableau public profile. So thank you.
Simon, brilliant presentation. I was holding my breath to listen to you, and I think it's applicable to all the audience. So guys, feel free to interact with Simon. So once again, great piece.
Thank you.
So far, it's a little bit quiet, so...
I think I am not able to post a question, so maybe I can just ask it verbally. So Simon, many thanks for the presentation. Amazing, because I'm really really also involved in enjoying this topic of the Center of Excellence. And the question is, so how would you define the success of the Center of Excellence, and if you measure it, and how? What are the measurements?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and if ever you want to check this out, Paul Chapman did a presentation both at Berlin last year and New Orleans the previous year in terms of how JLL manages our return on investment. So as part of our agile process, every dashboard that we do, we ask the business, so the person sponsoring the work, to articulate the financial value that they will receive back. Now, that could be an efficiency value because it could save people hours in terms of doing stuff manually, or it could be increased in compliance. So it could be that we're achieving better outcomes for the client. And as a result of that, there's a financial value to us in terms of retaining contracts. It could be about maximizing revenue. So we could do an efficiency dashboard that identifies we can work differently as a team, and that can help us reduce costs. But fundamentally, every dashboard has a financial value on it. And what that helps us do is make sure that we're not doing any work that's just, if you like, a nice to have or it would be interesting. We really say that as a BI team, we've got limited resources. So we challenge the business to make sure that when they're requesting work, they're thinking about the value it brings. And in terms of the value that I see, fundamentally, the way I judge success of the COE is about the people that I employ. So if I see my analysts developing their skills, I am able to retain their talent. I can see them taking Tableau certifications and growing as a team. That for me is how I judge success. And ultimately what that delivers are better, more insightful dashboards that our end users see. So we use Postgres a hell of a lot to be able to judge the success of the dashboards we do in terms of actively looking at who's using them and trying to look at patterns in terms of particular people. And we use that to do things such as maximize subscriptions because they're so powerful, being able to deliver data directly to people via email. So yeah, for us, Postgres and the data and the way that our dashboards are used is a critical part in terms of, as well as the ROI they deliver.
Very clear. Thank you. And I think it's also an important portion of the process. It's also engaged with the end users. So who is consuming the dashboards, it's also important to educate them. And there is also a big portion of the change management on that side.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. In my opinion, it's pointless creating the best dashboards in the world that you as an analyst are proud of, but if it doesn't meet the business need and people aren't using it, then it's very difficult to be able to justify why you've done it.
Do we have any other questions? All right, so we are approaching the end. Well, Simon, thanks again for the great piece, Simon and Juan. So feel free to interact with them directly. So I'm referring to the all attendees. So we're gonna have another user group event on 27th of May. So I'm not sure if we sent already the invitation. So keep an eye on your mailbox. Thanks again, and well, if you have still any questions, feel free. But I guess we're running out of time, and well, I wish you to stay safe in this difficult period of time. So, and I hope we can hear each other and see each other very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you online.